Today, guests think one of the most common career advice actually
completely bullshit in 2025.
Meet Mahir Munot.
I don't speak like this at home. If I spoke like this at home, I'd get kicked out of my house.
He is the keynote speaker, public speaking coach, and the founder of LinkedIn community for mastering your voice in a noisy world.
The biggest thing I would say is that I joined uni at 17, so everything was happening at the same time.
So if you're tired of cookie cutter advice and want the real game for standing out in uni and beyond, let's go!
What's the one piece of career advice you think every student should hear right now?
I'm still trying to figure this one out myself. I think purely from a anecdotal standpoint, in terms of this piece of advice helped me more than I've ever imagined, is it's kind of twofold. I think the first one being alignment, the greater alignment you can find between your skills. So the skills that you find yourself, you've got a competitive advantage over others, whether it be hard or soft, whether it be interpersonal communication skills or skills specifically relevant to your degree and your work, that you're better than most people at. Alignment with that and your identity, so your values. If you value trust and discipline, or maybe you value something completely different, maybe more empathy side of things, and if you value teamwork, right? Whatever it is. I think every single time I found success on my career's journey, it's been when there's been maximum alignment between the skills side and the value side. And that applies to almost everything that I've kind of injected that into my life, that philosophy, that the moment I found great alignment, whether it's on a personal side or a professional side, it's always worked out for me for the better. So that's what I would say.
Yes, when you align with your value and your skills, you enjoy what you are doing, and then you usually get a better result.
Yes,
like if you enjoy something, like if you like doing some sport, and then you're gonna be keen on it.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, and we often think visibilities are equal to vanity, but do you advocate for personal branding early? Why?
I think when it comes to personal branding at a student level, LinkedIn is everything.
LinkedIn is everything.
I think there is no better place to start than LinkedIn. And it's worked for me. It's worked for a lot of my friends who's just started posting on LinkedIn. And the reason I say early is because 50 years ago, your suit mattered the most. Your suit spoke first. That guy walks in with the big blazer and the best suit in the job. More attention because it's consumed in people's brains because they want to talk to that person. But then COVID came along and your suit didn't even make the camera. People were just wearing shorts underneath and whatever t-shirt they could find. So if it wasn't the suit, what do you think it was after? It was their voice, right?
Yeah.
But then just now we're having a sort of, I think, almost a revolution, so to speak, a young personal branding revolution, where before your voice or your suit even speaks, your online presence, which is your LinkedIn, speaks before you even enter the room. Right, because now we're in the hybrid mix of both online interviews and in-person interviews. Online assessment centers and in-person assessment centers, right? And to combat both, the only thing that overlaps and the only thing that can get you in the mind of whatever employer it is or whatever professional it is through having a LinkedIn presence. Because then they make predictions about who this person could be in the job interview. Do they seem confident? I predict this person based off their LinkedIn profile and based off their LinkedIn posts to be a confident person. And then when they hear your voice, you could align that belief. And then when you wear whatever you wear, you just ground that belief in that person's mind. So that's why I advocate for it early, because I think it gives a massive boost to any student looking to stand out from the crowd. And I think standing out from the crowd right now, molding that unique value proposition, one of the best ways to doing it is through LinkedIn.
So for you, LinkedIn is not a place for you to show your achievement, to flex, but also to show your personal values, to let people know more about you.
Yeah, and also just make an impression before the first impression.
Okay. If a student is walking into an assessment center tomorrow, what's two mental models they can carry in with them?
I think I'm going to assume when it comes to assessment centers, you're talking about the application process to landing a job.
Landing a job.
And obviously, communication skills is paramount. But breaking that down into mental models, I think when you metaphorically think of mental models when it comes to communication skills, it comes to conversational frameworks. And one of the most simplest conversational frameworks, which is based around the ancient Greek wisdom of pathos, logos, and ethos. If you're familiar with that, maybe a few of your viewers may be familiar with that. From school, you may be familiar with that. Is appealing to emotion. And a mental model that's helped me a lot, and a lot of the students that come to my community, is this idea of invitation, story, epiphany, and tailored lesson. And I'll explain that right now. I think this mental model, being a conversational framework, is great to think on the spot. If a student is stressed out, if they're just completely blanked out mid-assessment center and they need to present themselves to another human being the employer, this mental model can help a lot. The first step to this is invitation. So you would say something along the lines of, let's just say we're talking about AI and the conversation is flowing about AI. You invite the person you're talking to into a personal story. So you say, yeah, and I think AI is great because I remember when, and then now you remember when you go into a story. Let's say you go into a story about when you used AI to help speak to your dog. Maybe AI helped you make a certain noise that your dog understood, right? And that's a humorous story. That's a quite quirky story. It's going to help you stand out. But again, we're not just going to say a story that's completely unrelated to why you're there. It has to be related.
Yes.
So make sure the story, even if it's about the dog, what was the epiphany? What did you learn about AI in that scenario? Maybe you learned that AI is just way more capable than you ever thought it was. But then most students, and I also, stopped at the epiphany. I told the story, I stopped at the epiphany, and then the other person was like, wait, okay, but why did you actually tell me the story again? So I think you should always finish with the lesson, a tailored lesson. And that lesson should link to the job you're applying for and the company and their entire persona. So give me a random company. Big company.
Big company. Apple.
Apple, let's say, right?
Yes.
And forefront of tech. I am not a tech nerd, but I think using some basic knowledge, if I were to end in that epiphany that AI is more capable than we think, I could easily then tie in a tailored lesson based off that epiphany, based off the story, which could be something along the lines of, and I think now that I've realized this, I know that the potential that I have to use AI for Apple in XYZ realm, for XYZ job, could help whatever. And I think through that, whenever you're stuck, if you just keep those 4 steps mentally modeled in your mind, invitation, story, epiphany, lesson, then you'll always have a way to bring back the conversation.
So the lesson should be tailored to the company that I'm applying. Like if I'm applying for Patagonia, I should talk something about sustainability.
Of course, yes.
So
yes.
Every interview is different.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Yes. And you are students who have gone to a big thing such as Victor Yan. What quality separates the ones who get noticed from the one who get overlooked?
I think the biggest quality is, like you mentioned Victor's name, he's got an amazing personal brand online.
Yeah.
He's got a huge personal brand on LinkedIn. I think leading on from that quality, there's a teaching aspect. Victor also teaches students, mentors students, and I'm sure you're familiar with the learning pyramid. Teaching is at the top, right?
Yeah.
And you don't consume information better than teaching. But not only that, I think teaching leads to mastery. Every single time I've tutored after the HSC, I never second guessed myself in that knowledge of that area. And then once you teach as well, word spreads if it works out, that other people start to know, and maybe they start to ask for your teaching services in whatever it is, whatever realm it is. And those 2 things alone help you stand out a lot. Because first of all, why is the person teaching this thing when that person could be working on their own journey? Why are they giving back to the community? So it shows service, it shows hunger, it shows obsession. And the personal brand automatically makes you stand out in the sea of noise. And like we talked about earlier, it makes the impression before the first impression. Those, I'd say, are the top 2 qualities that students like Victor are using right now to stand out.
Yes, teaching people is really useful in learning. Like when I teach people, I feel not confident, but after that, after teaching people, I feel more confident.
There you
I
go.
feel like I master the things.
Amazing. Perfect.
Yeah. Okay, let's go back to at very beginning. Who was Mahir before all the titles and achievements?
Yeah, sure thing. As a kid, I was always very playful and I was always very, very energetic. And throughout that, primary school pretty much served that for me to a great extent. And then moving on to high school, that's when things started to pretty much take a whole flip, a whole 180 flip. I started early in high school very, very well. I was enjoying it a lot. I went to quite a high-performing school in the state. In the state, it was a selective school, so it was very competitive, and I think I'm very grateful for that because it built a level of competitiveness in me, which is serving me to this day, both academically and on a careers front. But I think that before that, I was a very keen sports star. I used to play a lot of sports, so this public speaking stuff that I'm doing and a lot of the other community run initiatives that I perform, that was never on the cards. Like if you told me that I was going to be doing what I'm doing right now back in high school, I would have paid you $1 million and said no way, and then I would have lost the money, right? So before everything started kicking off, I was just your standard selective school kid.
Oh, so those experience in your high school actually built confidence for you, like in public speaking and something like that?
Yeah, 100%. I'd say that the only reason I'm doing what I'm doing now is because of my high school experiences.
Okay.
In a nutshell, I hit rock bottom, both mentally and physically, in high school. And the very moment I can never forget, it was 2 days before the HSC. And it was quite terrifying what happened that day. And I was pretty much weeping on the bus home from school. And after that, I was numb to a lot of emotion, and I had no idea what I wanted to do after school and no idea how I was going to crawl out of this cave that pretty much I was stuck in high school, both on a mental level, like an emotional level, and also on a physical level. So the only checkbox for me was that I had to graduate and just forget all of this and just start a new chapter. And I had so much pent up, I had so much built up emotion to just express new ideas. I had so much built up desire to share my thoughts around those people around me, but it kept getting suppressed. And then it just exploded in university. And the way it exploded, it just happened to go through two very distinct avenues. One being public speaking, and the second being what I like to call public writing. But the bigger one being public speaking. And through that has birthed a lot of the things you probably see online today.
Yes.
So the blogs on LinkedIn, the content I put out, it's a kind of a holistic representation of that emotion from high school being just branching out into all my passions.
Yes, those experiences in high school actually unlock your potential in uni.
Yes. Yeah.
So what do people misunderstand the most about public speaking actually, like especially in uni students?
Yeah, I think the biggest misunderstanding is what I misunderstood for an entire year when I started this journey. I think for me, it was this idea of energy. I thought as long as I'm the most energetic person in the room, there is not a better communicator than me. I thought as long as I can demonstrate such a high level of energy that no one else can match it, then I've ticked all the boxes to becoming the best communicator I can. And it wasn't until I landed an opportunity which I focused on, it was a volunteering opportunity around a mental health organization actually. It's called Are You OK Day. I'm not too sure if you guys are familiar with it. And it wasn't until I landed a job with them as a community ambassador where I had to go into organizations and share my story from high school and beyond that I realized that energy is definitely not going to cut it. But then I was in a dilemma. I thought energy's been working for me this whole time. High energy got me all the jobs I desired in my first year of university. It got me past all the job application processes, the interviews. It helped me make amazing first impressions.
Yeah.
But I struggled to compartmentalize that energy when I was in a one-on-one scenario like we are right now.
Yeah.
Or if I was in a small group setting, right? And that grounded me. And it pretty much forced me to realize that energy is not is not the number one marker or any distinct marker to masterful communication. I then realized that the way to best attack this kind of problem was to modulate your energy. And the only way you can modulate your energy is through having cogs of communication. So I like to call these cogs of communication, as I like to categorize them into 4 main cogs. And these 4 main cogs destroy, or they destabilize the common misconception of public speaking that a lot of students have, which is energy. The first cog being, you need to have a cog of communication for your friends. Back when I was at the start of my journey, I just had that one cog, which was high energy. And then I started speaking to my family and friends, just like I would speak in front of in a lecture theatre to a bunch of students. And then I was like, this is not going to work. My mum was going to kick me out of the house. She was driving her nuts. My friends if I kept going like that, I would have no more friends left, right? I couldn't be speaking. Like I was speaking to a bunch of 20, 200 or a number of students on a small, intimate level. That's why I think the first cog is, and you need a cog for family. And I think that's the most important cog, because at the end of the day, you always come back home, right?
Yes.
I think the second cog is you need a cog for friends. There are obviously things that you talk about your friends that you don't talk about with your family. And that, I think, needs a second cog. And both cogs, you have to modulate your energy in a specific way. And that's what I talk about. And the third cog is, I think you need a cog for professional circumstances. So when you walk into a networking event, when you are meeting somebody for the first time on a professional front and you want to make a brilliant first impression, or you are just in a work environment and something new is happening, you need a third cog for that setting, right? Too much energy may throw them off. Too little energy just sounds like you're not interested. And the fourth and final cog is what I like to call a cog for high stakes situation. And these high stakes situations are your job interviews, going into assessment centers, going into to make the very first impression that you need for that person to give you a job, right? And that cog is what I think most students struggle to create or struggle to oil and sharpen. And I love to help students do that.
I thought that before this talk, I thought we should have energy as high as we can. But after your explanation, I realized that we have to choose. It really depends on what scenarios. Talking to families, talking to friends, or talking to professionals.
100%.
Energy is not as high as we want. Actually, we have to choose. We have to decide in what situation are we talking with.
Yeah.
In your experience mentoring many students, what does someone's communication style say about their character?
I've talked to a lot of first-year students. I've mentored a lot of first-year students around their communications journey. I run a community around public speaking, teaching public speaking to students for free. And I've noticed that rather than a reflection on the character, I think their communication style is a larger reflection of what specifically they intend to achieve in their professional journey. What I mean by that is, I think somebody doesn't place as much value on their communication if their value of their mechanical skills, maybe they are studying IT and their coding is more important, and the only reason they come to one of my community meets is because they want to improve their communication skills for just one work presentation, and that's it, and they're done. They don't want to worry about it at all, right? And because of that, I think it's not as much a reflection of their character, but rather a reflection on their intentions around their professional work life. So we could have students come in to the community who want to, like I said, improve their communication skills for the sole purposes of delivering a speech that they have to deliver for their job, or maybe we've had a lot of high school students come in, and especially one I remember, he came in because he wanted to practice his school captain speech. But we've also have repeated students come in every week because communication skills, they're valued as one of their top skills and they want to repeatedly work on it every single week. So if I must have to answer the question of character, I think it shows, regardless of how someone communicates, the very fact that they're coming to learn, I think shows a very positive outlook on their character because they want to develop one of the most important skills for all uni students. Because at the end of the day, we only communicate, our value is perceived purely, or if not purely, almost all because of the way we communicate and our methods of communication. That's just coming from lived experience, and I think you can probably attest to that too. So, you know, I've had days when I walk into a petrol station and I'm not feeling the best, and the service station manager doesn't smile back. And then there's other days when I walk in just after having the best day at work, and then he's giving me the biggest smile ever. So I think that it comes down to how much you want to communicate your value.
Yeah.
And obviously values are a major part of everybody's character. But I think it also comes down to intention. If somebody just doesn't need it, then that's right for them.
Okay, I get what you mean. It's
Yeah.
really meaningful. So intention is actually quite important. Like you have some students like only for like one activities or two activities only.
Yeah.
But do you think that they should actually develop it long term, or they just only need to prepare for, like if they have an interview in the future, they only need to practice for one time only, or they should develop it as their personal skills?
I think personally, students who would like to prosper long term in their career journey definitely would benefit from continuously developing their communication skills, because I've just found it's never a one-off work presentation. It's never a one-off speech. It's going to come again, whether it's 2 months down the line or 2 years down the line.
Yeah.
And rather than going back to square one every time and just attending once and working on it just around that season, I don't see much of a harm to dedicate a few hours a week or a few hours a month, even if you're very busy, to improving that very skill. So, yeah.
Is WAM actually pointless? What's the story that proves grades and the whole game?
I don't think WAM is pointless. And neither do I think GPA is pointless.
Yeah.
I think if you're going to call WAM pointless, then you're effectively calling university pointless. And I heavily disagree with that statement. I think there are fundamental skills heavily laced with research. I'm talking research skills. That university, being built on research, teaches you like no other place can teach you. And I think regardless of what discipline anyone studies, research is required in almost every discipline. Regardless if you're a business owner researching to market your products better, or if you are a writer researching to figure out who can publish your book, right? Just two random examples that came to my mind. I think rather than a story that proved grades are not the whole game, a story that shows that grades complement the game is that I remember I applied for a law firm once, and they really wanted to see my WAM. So they really wanted to see a distinction level average for me to apply for that law firm. And they asked, send through the cover letter, send through the CV, send through your academic transcript with your WAM on it. They even wanted the HSC record as well, so they needed a certain ATAR. They only accepted applicants with a certain ATAR. And I remember it was a boutique law firm, and I sent through my academic transcript ATAR, and I by the way, I was 1 point below their firm's requirement of the ATAR. And I still sent through my application. They progressed me to the next stage. First thing I asked in the interview, at some point in the interview I asked, well, wasn't the ATAR higher than what I applied for and what I achieved? How come you guys progressed me to the next stage? And the first thing they said was, well, we couldn't have said no after seeing your cover letter. And I was like, oh wow, what was so special about the cover letter? And they said, well, it stood out because you communicated your value textually. To an extent, we believe that a small mishap in your ATAR or a slightly lower value in your ATAR, it made up for that. And that's why I think not only public speaking, but public writing is almost just as important. Two most important skills: selling yourself textually and selling yourself orally. And with those two skills, I think complementing with whatever WAM you have can almost all of the time work wonders for many uni students.
Yes, I'm a marketing student, and sometimes some products are not as good as we expected, but by marketing skill, you can actually elevate yourself, like selling yourself. You can like your RAM is like maybe 80, but you can bring it to like 90. After a good marketing, you have to know how to sell yourself to tell people what value do you have.
100%.
Yeah. So what a piece of career advice that sounds smart, but actually completely bullshit in 2025.
I think this one piece, it's a one-liner. It's the perfect way to wrap it up. It is not your aptitude, but it's only your attitude that determines your altitude. I think ever since I heard that, it's just never left my mind. And if there's ever a piece of advice I come back to, it's always that.
And one more final question.
Yeah.
If all your videos and posts, articles were erased from the internet forever, and you had the next 30 seconds to leave a message to a student, what would you say?
At the core of every time you open your mouth, there are three things that I always try to encompass. There are three things that I always try to hit. And I feel like if you can hit these three things as well, it will make you feel very, very fulfilled. The first one is education. If you can teach, if you can serve, if you can give back as much as you can. The second one is empowerment. If you can inspire others to take action, because taking action helped you. And the third one is entertainment, because, well, like you said, in this day and age, if everything is erased, that means there's a lot of entertainment that's erased as well. So if you can make people laugh, if you can make people cry, if you can make people smile, education, empowerment, entertainment, I think all round that can help you become a better communicator, hopefully, than what you are today.
I have a question. Why cry? Like, if I make people entertain, make people smile, but why I make them cry?
I think it's just a strong emotion. Not cry specifically. I think if you can make people feel any strong, intense emotion, then they are most likely to take action. Think about every single time you've been enraged and you didn't stop yourself. It may not have been the best action, but you took some sort of action, didn't you? And if maybe an employer is in a very high state of excitement because you've said something that stands out to them, they're most likely to take the action of hiring you. Right?
Make them surprised and make them
unforgettable. So if it's crying, if it's immense laughing, whatever it is, I think intense emotion, if you can communicate to evoke that, then empowerment falls into place, and so does education.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Pleasure, my friend.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time. Cheers.
Cheers.
No worries.